Hey everybody, it's your boy Captain Hunter coming at you again. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Thank you so much. Make sure that you do me a favor. Hit that rate, subscribe, and share button. Hit that rate, subscribe, and share button. Let me have to tell you again, all right? Okay, so here we go. We're going to get into it here. So the other day I was listening to a show by BGS Ibmore, and that's why I'm going to at him in this podcast that I'm doing. Love the brother, master teacher, love the brother, and he did a good he does ask me anything kind of thing. And so I was listening to him, and somebody had sent him a clip of Tucker Carlson from 4 years ago. Now it was a 30. I had to look this up because it was a 30-minute interview, and then it was but they only clipped out 10 minutes. I'm not going to play the full 10 minutes of that particular interview, but there's more. That 10-minute clip about men and masculinity is relevant, but he said more in the 30-minute clip. So I'm going to kind of splice those two together. But before we get to that, right? So this is an ongoing topic about men, masculinity, how we're doing, how we're proceeding, how we're going, how we're growing, right? It's becoming a problem. Not just for black males, which has always been a problem, but now white males are suffering the effect. And to listen to some persons in the manosphere, right, it's becoming a global phenomenon that is spreading to the world where men are losing. And there's no problem. I don't have a problem with the opening up of the floodgates to allow for anyone and everyone to succeed and to progress, right? So if feminism, probably shouldn't have said that word, but if those types of mechanisms allow women to proceed, more power to you. I have a daughter, want her to be everything she can be and should be in life. No issues with that at all. What I do have a problem with is the emasculation of men and boys. That's what I have a problem with, right? You can't uplift one to put, you shouldn't be able to step on one to build up another, right? One, in order to progress, shouldn't have to step on me in order so you can progress, right? I have a problem with that because I also have a son, and I don't want him to fall behind because they're emphasizing, pushing, advocating for certain individuals. And I don't care what that is: race, gender, ethnicity, sexuality. Let's just make the market clear, fair, and all that. So before I had watched the BGS Ibmore his breakdown or take on the masculinity, but as presented by Tucker Carlson, former Fox News host. Fox News they always are doing clips about men are being labeled as toxic, et cetera, right? So they had a guy named Fabio on there. I try to put that picture up there, right? I'm not going to play that interview, but I do want to play an interview by a representative here. Josh Hawley, he's a senator or representative. I'm not sure which one he is. He's a member of Congress, and from Missouri, I believe it is. And talking about gender roles and toxicity, and we're being labeled as toxic. So we'll play that, and we'll give that discussion, and then eventually we'll get to the Tucker Carlson interview.
I just think the message that the left has sent men in this country for decades now is that they're trash. I mean, that's a literal quote from a leftist professor. Men are trash. And I think too many men are.
Let me tell you something. I had an interview with someone. Man, she was an anthropologist, and the interview actually got corrupted, so I had to take it down. I'm not exactly sure. I think my settings were wrong on OBS and when I recorded because it was always extremely choppy. So, but I think I still have it. I'm going to try to put that together and put it back up because I don't want to make it seem like I'm hiding anything. But she said in particular, I think that the men in the manosphere are trash. I can't remember if she said men are trash or the men in the manosphere are trash. Whatever it was, the subject was about men, the rise. I went to talk to her about the rise of the manosphere. She kept co-opting it, right? And as an anthropologist, as an educator at a university, right, I thought that was very problematic for her to talk about these individuals like that. We ought to be able to look at these things from a critical lens as professors and say, hey, listen, this is where things are going. And let's have a good academic scholarly talk or discussion about this and where it's going. Even if you don't agree, okay, tell me why you don't agree. But to get to these pejoratives about people are trash and this whole thing is trash and all this, I mean, that tells you what it is. So I don't want to keep interrupting Josh Hawley, but I have to agree that this is a phenomenon that I've experienced, and I'm going to try to put that podcast up.
heard that message for too long and believed it.
As a society, we have lost what it means to be masculine. Actually, we've deemed masculinity as bad. It's toxic. It's this undesirable trait that men, they fear. They don't want to be seen as oppressors, and that's what we've deemed masculinity as, is really oppression.
For me, I mean, going all the way back to college, which for me was back in the early 2000s, I mean, certainly then on college campuses, you already had this underlying idea that men are toxic, that masculinity is inherently toxic. But it's really burst out, I think, into the culture in the last 10, 15 years and become so predominant on the left and become so strong now in entertainment, even in some segments of the sports industry. Certainly now the corporations are pushing this message. And I just think that it's not that men are toxic, it's that the message is toxic.
Boys are more at risk for suicide, they're more at risk for incarceration. The deaths of despair among boys and men, which are deaths as a result of suicide or alcoholism, are increasing, and actually male life expectancy is going down. And part of this is changes in our education system, things like zero tolerance towards boys, dialing back on recess, the narrative of toxic masculinity.
What does that mean for zero tolerance for boys? I don't understand that. I don't understand that. In the Black community, there was a couple of Black ladies who were, I want to say that, a couple of Black ladies who were saying we got to delete all male fetuses in the womb and all kind of crazy stuff like that, right? So this idea that men are just inherently, just because they have a phallus or because they have a Y chromosome or whatever it is, certain levels of testosterone, whatever, are just inherently bad is problematic, right? So I'm glad that this is being addressed. And I think that, number one, it's good because I'm a boy, I have a boy, and I want my daughter to marry, well, she can marry who she wants, but this idea is very, very tragic, and it's becoming problematic. As a former police officer, right? I don't want I want a certain level of testosterone on the police force. I want that. I think it's good. Of course, it's got to be regulated, got to be controlled, all that, right? There are some negative aspects that can come along with it. I'm not going to dismiss that, but we got to be able to control it. So this is becoming a problem.
Left's vision is that men should aspire to be an androgynous consumer of stuff, because manhood, they say, is inherently toxic. So we should abandon that whole idea. Of course, they also want to abandon womanhood. We know too, right? There's no men, there's no women. Just be a consumer. Just sit in your basement, just play stuff online, order stuff online, and do as you're told. That's really what their vision of quote unquote manhood is. I think the modern left, their war against gender is a war against both men and women and any idea of gender roles at all.
We saw the Me Too movement, and we saw how, in particular, the left was the party that embraced this idea, that embraced the idea of upholding and honoring and celebrating women based off of our own uniqueness from men. But now it's the same party, the same administration, who is actively undermining everything that they once fought for when fighting for feminism.
I think the sexes are completely intertwined, and it's not a zero-sum game. When men are doing poorly, that also affects women. Women struggle to find fathers and husbands and good partners in life, and the reverse is also true. So I think we need to dial back the narrative and the idea that men and women don't need each other.
Of course, I believe men and women are created equal, but we're different. We are different in the way that I think we're compatible. We have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's what we deserve to be recognized on.
I think what we need to do is send a true message to men, which is that, listen, real strength is found in providing for others. Real strength is found in responsibility. And the more responsibility you take on, the greater your influence, the greater your sense of purpose in life, the greater your legacy. And that's a message I think men want to hear. It's a message we need them to embrace for the future of our families and our country.
So that was a web exclusive, I guess, right? So that was not what I saw on Fox News. And as I record this, it's December 2023. So this clip was from July 25th, 2023. So this is a few months ago. This is not the clip that I saw. I was Googling around trying to find that particular clip. I guess they didn't clip it out, but I do think it's worth talking about. So here's a clip. I'm not going to play this, right? So this is Guy Fabio, right? He joins Cavuto, Coast to Coast. Is this showing up? Yeah, it's showing up. So that's what that is, right? So let me try to get to something else here. So yeah, so this is the same clip, right? So this is, yeah, so they're blaming Hollywood, and I've seen a lot of things in Hollywood. There's a show I plan to do about something about Hollywood as soon as I can find the time. There's a few clips I want to clip out from this particular show, so I got to watch the show again and get the clips and all that. So it's going to take a little bit of time for me to get to that particular place. But let's check out Tucker Carlson's message to men.
You are
okay. So we're going to get into it here. So this is going to be Tucker Carlson, the message to men. This is a clip, 10-minute clip. So we're going to watch not the full thing, but let's get
in
into
Washington much of the time, just glittering. It's getting richer all the time. The home values are going up all the time in every county around it. But you also go to Western Maine. Was that something that clued you in that maybe?
Yeah, it had a huge effect on my life, on my politics, on the way I see the country. Yeah, I've gone to the same little town my whole life. One of the poorer counties, one of the poorest counties on the East Coast, beautiful place. And I've watched it dissolve. I mean, the culture there, wonderful people. I spend 3 months a year there every year. And, you watch the same very familiar pathologies that we wrote a lot about in the 80s and 90s in the inner city, right in the middle of this overwhelmingly conservative, 100% white, rural community. And
now, notice what the man just said right there. He goes to his community where he grew up at, 100% white or nearly 100% white, the same maladies, pathologies, problems that are going on with the inner cities. Who's he talking about? So now this pathology, this situation that was going on in the inner city has spread. And he's upset with that. But nobody was upset when it was happening to the inner cities, right? This is what he's saying. Now it's a problem. Now it's a problem to men.
And you start to ask yourself, well, why is this happening? Is it because they just, is welfare doing this? Well, I'm not sure that our assistance programs make.
The welfare do this to our kids? The welfare do this to the black community? This is what he's saying. He's comparing these things. There's a bunch of welfare queens, 1980s Ronald Reagan talks. There's a bunch of welfare queens ruining the inner city. Crazy.
Make it better. I think they undermine the family in a lot of ways. But they're not the problem. I mean, they didn't cause this. Actually, they're exacerbating it. They didn't cause it. And what caused it was the collapse of male jobs. And we should have learned this. And it actually has made me reassess a little bit. Not my feelings about watching the family collapse in inner city America. I still feel that's a disaster. It demonstrably has been a disaster. There's really sort of no other way to look at it. But the causes are a little different from what I thought. Like if men don't have full-time work, families fall apart. If men make less than women, women don't want to marry them. This is not some Handmaid's Tale like talking point that we in the alt-right believe. This is the product of like a century of consistent social science. And by the way, I wish it weren't true. I wish women were very excited to marry overweight, indolent men who played video. I'm serious.
Tucker, what are you?
No. I'm serious. I wish it were enough to sort of be charming at dinner. But it's not, actually. And that's not a choice that men make. It's an instinct that women have. And it's true over time across population, race, income. So like clearly this is a feature of human nature. So if you're mad about it, kind of not my problem. At some point you have to address people as they are, which is my basic problem with a lot of what happens in Washington, is not address human nature, which is immutable. It's the one thing that doesn't change. And so if you have a society where, on average, women make more than men, you will see a very predictable series of events. Women will stop getting married. They will not stop having children, by the way. That's a biological imperative. They will continue to do that, but those children will not have a father in the home over large populations. And that's exactly, and then everything else that happens, which as conservatives we're very familiar with, because we spent a lot of time moralizing about it. I certainly have, a lot of time. And we spent almost no time asking, like, how can we make this better?
What he's talking about, again, is Fox News railing against the inner city problems, saying that these are problems of lack of fathers and all this kind of stuff. And it spent a lot of time as conservative railing against this type of thing. What they haven't talked about is how to fix it. But now the chickens have come home to roost. These policies, these problems, these problems, I'll just put it that way, have come home and now are hitting where he lives at. And now there's a problem with it. And now that, before they didn't have a problem with deindustrializing the inner cities, right? When Detroit and Chicago and where I'm from, the New York area, Connecticut area, all these factories are now going on the seas. Men lost their jobs, right? You can't just graduate from high school at 18 years old, walk to a dock, get a job as a dock worker, get a job as a factory worker, and be able to support your family. I had a conversation with my cousin just the other day, talking about a teacher, presumably bachelor's degree, probably has a master's degree, has to work an extra, and this is a woman teacher, has to work at a store to supplement her income. This is crazy, right? So this deindustrialization, the removal of factories from American shores has hurt men in particular, because they don't want to go to college, particularly as the clip that I alluded to before. It's not in their best interest. It's not helping them. They don't see a reason for it. The curriculum is not male focused. It's not. It is worse. It's hostile to male enrollment. Why would you go there and listen to your toxic, right, from instructors? Right, my own anecdotal experience of having dealt with an instructor of anthropology, right? It's crazy. Why would you sit there and pay money for that? So these problems are now left the inner city and they're spreading. And now it's a problem. Now they want to talk about it. And this clip is from 4 years ago.
And it's true over time across population, race, income. So clearly this is a feature of human nature. So if you're mad about it, kind of not my problem. At some point you have to address people as they are, which is my basic problem with a lot of what happens in Washington, is not address human nature, which is immutable. It's the one thing that doesn't change. And so if you have a society where, on average, women make more than men, you will see a very predictable series of events. Women will stop getting married. They will not stop having children, by the way. That's a biological imperative. They will continue to do that, but those children will not have a father in the home.
So let me pause it again here. So what's the issue with that, right? So what? Okay, the women want to have babies, right? But do you need? The question has to be: do you need a father? Do you need? What is the prime purpose, example, primary benefit of having male presence? This is the question that we've got to answer. And I think that there is enough social science to say that men are important. Fathers are important. Obviously it can't always be a father. Maybe sometimes they become incapacitated, incarcerated, deceased, etc. So somebody should step in as a male presence, a role model, and to suggest that male presence is unnecessary to the functional development of children, I think is patently false. And I think there is enough social science to back this up. But again, this is what is coming home to these individuals.
For large populations. And that's exactly, and then everything else that happens, which as conservatives we're very familiar with, because we spent a lot of time moralizing about it. I certainly have, a lot of time. And we spent almost no time asking, how can we make this better?
Because they didn't care.
So if you have a society where
They didn't care before, now they care. And when it's happening to the inner city, you didn't care, right? When now it's coming home to your hometown, some nice white suburban upscale community, now it's a problem. Okay.
Full-time employers, and this is true in Western Maine and it's true in much of rural America, are the hospitals and the schools. You have to ask yourself, can you have a functioning society, the basis of which is always the nuclear family, always, in such a place? And the answer is no, you can't. So I don't know why we're not spending more time on this. I also don't know why, these stats come in every day, and we have a couple people on our show who are really interested in this stuff, share my interest in it. And so they're constantly sending me this stuff. I just got one today. So there's, of course, the life expectancy numbers 3 years in a row down. I mean, if that's not a red alert, I'm not sure what is. The suicide numbers are my fixation. I know 4 different people have killed themselves in the last year and a half, all middle-aged men. And if I'm going to be 50 in May, if you're roughly my age, ask yourself if you don't know people who've killed themselves recently. You probably do, because the epidemic is that widespread. And by the way, these are affluent people too. Something's going on. There's no interest in what that might be. But the statistic that I got today, which I think is, and I don't care how it sounds because I think it's real. Out today, 2 hours ago, new study shows that the number of men under 30 who report having no sex at all ever has risen by 3-fold in 10 years. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, I'm a social conservative, just for the record, a pretty strident one actually. My first thought was, well, porn. That was my first thought, which I think is bad. I do. But that's not it. I thought, what society does that remind me of? It reminds me of the Middle East, actually. One of the core problems in the Middle East, and we lay this at the feet of polygamy, but it's deeper than that, is that the economic stratification is so profound that only the rich people get to mate. And you have a huge population of young men who don't have mates. Now, I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, but it's just true because, again, it's nature, and the farther away you get from nature, the farther off course you are. Nature tells you, and your life experience tells you, you don't want a large population of celibate men.
So that whole comment about the Middle East and stuff, right? So here's where, he kind of treads close to xenophobia and all that. He just treads close to xenophobia, so.
That is a recipe for instability. For chaos, actually. It's a dangerous group to have. You're lucky. No wonder everyone's pushing weed on the population. I'm not joking.
Right, so this is where, and I really should get this interview back up. This is where the anthropologist that I was speaking with, they don't care. There isn't, these men aren't good. These men need to step up, right? These passport bros are all losers. They need to, nobody wants them anyway. There is a lack of concern and care for the mental health and stability of these individuals. So, but these are the people that you really they form groups, they form gangs, right? This is the genesis of gangs, genesis of white supremacist organizations, right? This is the genesis of it. When you don't give them something to do. I don't give former President Trump a lot of credit, but one thing he did say, right, when they asked him about the white supremacist groups or something like that, and he said something, I can't remember the exact quote that he said. But he said something, if we put these people to work, then they're not going to worry about that. That's exactly the point, right? These people are disgruntled because they feel as if people are taking their jobs, because women are taking their jobs, because foreigners are taking their job. There's not enough jobs. This is the genesis of all these type of problems. I'm not saying any of this. I'm not saying what President Trump is true, but there is. I am saying actually I actually agree with much of what he was saying. There is a nexus. There is a connection. Maybe it's not a direct causation, but there certainly is a correlation. You got to give these people something to do. Got to give them jobs, security, the ability to afford to put a woman in a home and be able to afford a family. Because when you don't, then you have nothing. You have nothing to do. You'll collapse, right? You'll go into they'll go into meltdown. They'll become rogue individuals, right? And we know this in the animal kingdom, right? When there's no guidance, when there's no rules, regulations, that the males in that society go buck wild. This is proven in many different, particularly mammalian species.
They're afraid. And so what that is a picture of, it's a picture of a society in which the spoils increasingly go to a smaller or shrinking really number of people. And your average young person, that's the poor segment of our society, is young people, don't have enough to buy a car or a house. They're shackled to student loans from which they cannot escape. And they don't have enough to mate. And one of the reasons is because they're living with their parents. We have a higher percentage of young men living with their parents than in my lifetime by far.
What did Cardi B say? Broke boys don't deserve no sex, right? And the chime in, I know that's right. So yeah, you got to give these people purpose. You got to, as a man, you got to have purpose. You got to be on your game, on your grind, develop a purpose, go towards that purpose. And to hear constant messages that you're not worthy, that you're toxic, that your purpose needs to be aligned with something else, and force weed on people, take drugs, emasculate yourself. There's nothing wrong with it. No, stay on your game, stay on your grind, stay on your purpose.
Elites at the top who love corporate power, who themselves are winning more and more votes from the upwardly mobile part of America. And even though the Republican Party has almost tried to repel working class whites from coming in, and in some cases working class Latinos from coming in, they seem to be coming into the party. So what is the role of a conservative?
You need a formation of a third party, a true working class party where white working class individuals, black working class individuals, Hispanic, Asian, all these working class individuals, I'm saying individuals, white, male and female, all individuals need to be able to go to this party, because as being alluded to in this question here, is that the elites have totally abandoned the middle class, completely abandoned the middle class. Either you're rich and they care about you and their tax cuts, or if you're poor, then they're going to try to give you something to try to get you out of that, right? But it's the middle class that continues to get screwed, and we need to form a third viable party
In America right now.
Or working class black men, by the way, if I could just say the obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's no reason that African American men shouldn't be voting for a party that rejects rigid 1970s era feminism, or that stands for due process in the rule of law. I mean, there's just no reason. And one of the reasons you see such chaos in our politics right now is because the terms haven't been defined. Sort of nobody sort of knows where we are. I mean, you had the party of the factory owners versus the party of the workers, and now they've inverted, but the leaderships don't really understand that this has happened, and they don't want it to happen, actually, certainly on the Republican side. I mean, they my whole lifetime, you would hear people say, oh, it's the party of the country club. And you'd be like, well, that's appalling. That's totally untrue. And you retreat to the bar at Round Hill and be like, I can't believe they're saying that. It was totally true.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there because, and I'm going to play some of the comments here. Wait just a minute. Are you saying that traditional roles for men and women actually produce a better society? Who could imagine that, right? I love how much this man loves his society. A good man, God bless him. If you want more young men to get married, try this. Stop calling them toxic. Stop saying college is rape culture. Allow them to be men. Let them know there's nothing wrong with being a man. Give them the economic and social benefits of being married. Stop deifying women. Wise and honest words from Tucker Carlson. Tucker was 100% correct in everything he said. Wow, finally, someone speaking the truth. It's amazing this stuff is a mile away. The rest of us can walk over without seeing it. Tucker and a few others with this gift might be our only hope of saving this country, as long as we pay attention to feminism has broken the social contract that if a man did a necessary job, he could have a wife and family. Right. Yeah. So I'm sure that goes on and on about that, right? So you can do all this stuff as a man, you can do all this stuff, right, and not get a wife, right? Back in the 1950s, 1960s, you could have a job at Sears. Think about this. You could have a job at Sears. A man could go to Sears, have a job selling whatever he's selling, putting together lawnmowers, whatever they were doing, back then. Selling refrigerators and all this kind of stuff, and be able to support a family. You could go to graduate from high school and be unskilled labor, and they would teach you how to, work the machines and it's all gone. And you could provide for a family. In some cases, provide for more than one family, and provide for a family. And now that's all gone, right? It's all gone. I want to find the full clip of this. All right, so this is the full clip, right? So I'm sure that they probably paid thousands of dollars for a 33-minute interview, unless it was cut. But it's only 33 minutes long. I just want to play the part that we didn't see, because there's another good part in here, which Tucker Carlson talks about. When Tucker Carlson talks about men and masculinity and maleness. So I'm going to try to get to that part.
No, I'm not joking. So if I'm abetting whining or encouraging whining, my gosh, my apologies. I don't mean to. I'll tell you what the goal is demonstrably not. A country where the suicide rate is going up. You can throw any numbers you want at me. I don't care what the GDP is. I definitely don't care what your fake unemployment statistics say, because they're fake. And I really don't care what your inflation numbers say, the fakest numbers of all. All I care about is how people are doing. Think of it like your kids. You could be like, well, I don't know, you went to Choate and Middlebury. You're fine. It's like I'm on the verge of killing myself. I'm sorry, you didn't hear me. You went to Choate and Middlebury. You're fine. And it's like maybe the steps that you thought would produce the result that you desired were the wrong steps, or who knows what happened, but it doesn't matter because we're not getting to where we need to be.
Right. If you have a 23-year-old kid and you say, hey, this 23-year-old kid has a mid-six-figure GDP, and we count it in all the college debt that he has.
Or whatever. Maybe it's not primarily economic, or maybe there's something in the food. I mean, honestly, why are testosterone levels going down? Really? What happens when they go down? I mean, get to 50 and you know what I mean? It's like, that's a disaster. Is NIH on this? No, not at all. It's not interested. Sperm counts, way down. But we're like, oh, we can't talk. Really? Are you interested in continuing the species? Like, these are the most basic markers of how you're doing. Life and death, like, that's all that matters. And we're completely ignoring that in favor of the most abstract, cooked, stupid, totally immaterial numbers. They don't tell us anything. Those numbers tell us a lot. They don't tell us what the solutions are, but they tell us what the conversation should be. And so my only role as a non-public policy person, as a person with a completely unimpressive academic record, though now I feel like that maybe that's something I should be bragging about more, is to try and just start the conversation on those questions. And it's amazing to me how hostile the reception is when you bring that up. And that tells you everything right there. Oh, shut up. Like, none of this stuff affects me personally, just to be totally clear about it. I'm always going on about immigration, not because it has a single downside in my life, not one, not a single one. I mean, the biggest downside is my neighbors hate me for it because it's like a threat to their nannies. Okay. You see it on that. So the Republicans look at the numbers, and they're fine at numbers, usually the wrong numbers, but whatever. And they look at the numbers and they're like, okay, our basic demographic, as we say in television, is aging, shrinking. We need to bring some new people into this coalition, or else we're never going to win anything. So we need to bring African Americans, Latinos, Asians, immigrants into this thing. How do we do that? So then Frank Luntz shows up and he's like, I've got a good idea. Just be super liberal in immigration. They'll love that. And all the dumb people in the Congress are like, yeah, it's a good idea. Because they don't believe anything they say anyway, and they hate themselves. So it's like that kind of comports with, in their hearts they know they're wrong, as Richard Brookhiser once said. Totally true. So look at the numbers. They never look at the next set of numbers, which is, okay, just take out white voters and just ask Latino voters or African American voters. Do you think we need a ton more immigration? And we need maybe we have about 1.1 million a year people coming in legally now. Let's double it to 2. How would you feel about that? They're not for that at all. What are they for? They're for what everybody is for, which is the ability to raise your own kids. If you want to win new voters to your party, stop with the identity politics crap and go with the universal appeals that, again, by their nature, appeal to everyone. And chief among them is the freedom to raise your own kids. Now, why don't the only people who get to raise their own kids are rich people. Like, everyone in my neighborhood has a parent stay home for that, not forever, but for that period when your kids are little and, birth to school or whatever. There's a several-year period where most parents, if given the choice, not all, nothing compulsory here, but if given the choice, most will stay home to raise their own children. But most people can't do that because they can't afford it. The one person, I hate to say this out loud, but it's true, before she went completely nuts, who wrote a book on this, and it's a great book, was Elizabeth Warren. And she did an academic study. It's called The Two-Income Trap. She wrote it about 10 years ago, again, before she went crazy, or she was sort of crazy, but she makes a good point, which is that actually we have told young women that they have this moral obligation to work for some creepy big company, give their lives over to some business for the benefit of shareholders above their duty to their own family. And that's really the message of modern feminism. You have a moral obligation to serve the market before you serve your family. And conservatives, for reasons that I honestly don't understand, have been like, yeah, that sounds right. That's totally right. That sounds like liberation. It's not bondage or anything. Well, it is bondage, actually. It's a lie, and it destroys people. Why would you tell your own daughters that? Like, I think your daughter comes to you, my husband and I would love to have children. No, I really think you have an obligation. There's a quarterly earnings report out, and you got to work for that. You're not a shareholder, but you got to work for that. And that's what we're telling everybody, and both sides are complicit in it. How about the Republican Party pivots just a little bit and says, no, we want a society where if you want to, you can afford to have a family on one income. Because, by the way, we had that only for like 100 years, and it worked pretty great. We don't have it anymore, and maybe you'd like that.
Well, it wasn't really applicable to African Americans because we still had to work because we were denied many of the benefits. But the point is still there.
Would you like that? That's not an abstract promise. That's a concrete promise. And who knows how you get there? But why not start with what you want? And that's what I want.
All right, so I'm going to leave it off right there. So this is just some of the stuff that I thought was really important. I don't know how much of this I can play, if they're going to give me copyright strikes or not or whatever, but I want to react to this conversation that's going on about masculinity and finding our place and all this type of thing. So Tucker was addressing this 4 years ago. Elizabeth Warren, as he mentioned, has done it. There's been numerous works out here addressing this trap that we're all in, and it's time that we try to do something about it. And that means changing our voting stances, changing our voting political parties, maybe even creating a political party, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to piggyback off of BGS, who I thought it did a good job at that. And much shout out and much love to everyone. So let me know your thoughts, your opinion about this particular video, what Tucker Carlson said, masculinity, the state of it, state of masculinity, state of femininity, state of feminism, masculinism, the state of what's going on here. Let's check it out. I want to hear your thoughts, your opinion. Is Tucker right? Were the other articles and clips that I played, were they correct as well? Till next time, much love and peace, everyone.